Okay, so in this video, we're going to start using Photoshop to build out our composition. So the first thing I'm going to do, we've brought this image onto the stage already. I'm going to turn it off, and we can hide and turn off images in our layer menu here. And on the background, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag and drop that down onto what's called New Layer and duplicate it. You can also, at any time, just right-click on any layer and go to Duplicate Layer and click OK. And we can make a duplicate copy. I don't ever really kill the original background layer, so I use other layers from it to build compositions in Photoshop. I'm going to name this BG for background. And what I'm going to do here is I'd like to actually go over here to this little paint swatch. You notice we got two of them. I'm going to click on the first one, and I'm going to select a black. Now, here's what's most interesting about the color picker is if you remember from my color theory video about the RGB, we're noticing RGB in here. We're also noticing C, M, Y, and K for black. And then up top, we call this hue, saturation, and balance. Okay, so the color picker is broken down in these concepts. But RGB, if I go 0, 0, 0, I get a complete black. If I go 255, 255, 255, I get complete white light. Isn't that great? And then B being balance, if I do 50% balance, it's going to find a middle tone. Okay, saturation applies the same, but it goes the other direction across the picker. And then hue is helping me locate a range of a scale based off the spectrum of light. So if I was to use this, I could go in 20s, and noticing that this is the spectrum of light broken up like my color theory video where it had nanometers. It starts with red and ends with red though, but going in values of 20 across it helps me kind of find all those generalized areas of the spectrum of light broken up into the hues. Say 100, that's more of the green. 120, oh, we're getting a little bit more shaded green. 140, and so forth. Over here being CMYK, this is based off of actually percentages as we apply the secondary colors to create the primary colors of light, which is the RGB. And this goes by values of 100. So if I do 100% cyan, 100% magenta, and 0% yellow, and 0% black, I get the blue because the secondary color cyan mixed with magenta. Magenta creates blue. Let's say I want 0 cyan. Well, I'm going to get a complete value of magenta. And if I want to do 100% magenta and yellow, then I get my red. So it's really interesting how these numeric values work, and it's really great for the color picker because it helps you locate colors a little bit better as you get more experience. So I'm just going to go with 0, 0, 0 value. And again, this color picker applies directly to the color wheel of light. So you can go back to my color theory video and look at that color wheel of light, and it helps you understand these concepts a little bit more. I'm going to click OK. And right here I'm going to go, and I got my black, and I'm going to go up to what's called my paint bucket spiller. I'm going to click this. I'm just going to left click one time, and it's going to give me a nice black background. It took this tool in Photoshop, paint bucket spiller, and it filled it right in. Another thing I could do is I can click and hold down that tool and go to what's called gradient tool. And up top, I can actually click and drag, and it creates this gradient across that layer. That's pretty neat. I'm going to go Control Z. You can also hold Control and go Alt or the Option key if you're on Mac and hold and hit Z, which steps backwards. And that's up in Edit, which is right here. Step backwards or step forwards, and you can go back and forth. Because if you do Control Z, it only does it one time. But if you go Control, Alt, or Option key and then Z, it can go backwards multiple times. Keep that in mind in Photoshop. So if I, let's say I want the gradient tool, I'm going to click the swatch after I select it, click and hold it down and go to gradient, click up here. And if I double click that, it gives me variations of gradients. So I can say, well, let's say, you know what, I want to do a tri-gradient. So if I select this one, look, I get 3 different swatches. I could click this, double click it. I go in, let's say I want a black, 0, 0, 0. And let's say I double click this one, I want a kind of a mid-tone gray. So let's say for the RGB, let's do like 150 values for my mid-tone grays. Okay, And that'll give me kind of a medium gray if I go 150 straight down. And then let's say for here, I'll double click this swatch and go back and I'll do a 000 for the RGB. And now I'll click OK. So that's what's going to allow me to create across my comp. So if I hold Shift and just click and drag, it creates a nice straight line. And when I release my click from my mouse, it will create that gradient. Pretty cool, right? I'm going to do a Control, Alt, or Option key Z and step backwards. Or I could just go Image, Edit, step backwards, see? Alt Control Z. Okay. And I could do it the other way. So I could hold Shift and go this way. Click and drag. It gives me a nice perfect gradient that way. Pretty neat. I'll go Control Z and back out. All right. So if I want to do the gradient, that's really nice. Me personally, I'm going to go and click hold down. I'm going to go back to Paint Bucket. I'm just going to do the black because that's what I want. I'm going to be making a haunted house movie poster called, I'm going to create a title for this. Unlike the titles that you will be doing, I'm just going to go ahead and use a random theme tile, and I'm going to call it, Hotel in the Woods. So I'm going to make kind of a scary movie poster with that title theme just for this lesson. So I'm going to have this black background, and the first thing now I'm going to do is let's go ahead and let's look at turn this layer back on. Let's look at this woods of composition. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to use the selectional tool, and the hotkey for this is V. If you hover on any tool in Photoshop, it rolls out the hotkey right next to the name of it. And I'm going to take this, and we can use this image to build the rest of the comp based off the scale, which is really great. So I'm going to right-click on Layer 1. I'm going to go to Duplicate Layer and click OK. And I can click and drag, and I can move out another layer of it, right? Okay. Another thing I can do is I can just easily hold Alt or Option and click and drag, and it just automatically creates the duplication. So I have now 3 layers, see? And I can move and position that wherever I want. All right. So I'm going to put another one kind of over here. That looks pretty good. And then I will go ahead and use these 3 images just to kind of build the composition and maybe make something that's so here I've got a duplicate copy of this image behind it. Got this one, and then on top I've duplicated again. But what I want to do is take this layer, I'm going to move it underneath the first one, so then we can build out the sides a little bit more. But we can still maintain the perspective of this scene. I'm just going to use a few tools in here to help complete it. So I'm going to, on the first layer, I'm going to select it. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to select the very first one, and then what I'm going to do is go over here to this little drop-down tab on the right side of the screen, and I can go up to what's called Merge Layers. Now the hotkey for that is Control-E, so keep that in mind. And it's going to bring them all together in one. So I've already allowed myself to build out the rest of this comp using that technique. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the toolbar, and I'm going to hover over, and it's called Clone Stamp Tool, and I'm going to click this, and I'm going to simply up top, you see you have this little drop-down tab that allows me to adjust the size. And I can go fairly large with it. If I have a hardness of 0, it helps. And you have different brush tool settings you can apply in here too, but you can learn those later. And I'm just going to go ahead and just boost this up a little bit. And when I get the brush size I want, I went with like a 1512. I'll just click that tab to reclose it. The clone stamp's really interesting. I can hold the Option or Alt key down, and I will click an area of the photograph and just left click, then release that click, and it's going to allow me to draw that area over that that part of the image, and we're going to get rid of these seams that are running down in the image. So I'm just going to click, and I'm going to just click and tap it. And you can see right here, it's basically taking that area where I clicked Alt in this generalized area, and I'm just left clicking over it. And I'm able to get rid of these seams real easily, just left clicking. If you click and drag using the clone stamp tool, it's not really wise. Again, I'm going to just click in this general area, and you see how I got a seam down here where this tree just vanishes. Doesn't really help out. And now I'm just going to left click and tap it, and I'm going to draw this part of the image over. To get rid of that seam, just tap left click. It's the best way to use the clone stamp. Okay. All right. Perfect. And now I've already built out that composition to the edges using the single image, which is really great. So I got very light trees here. What I'll do is I'll hold Alt, and I'll now select this area of the image, and we can redraw over it again. And I'll just go ahead and I can click and drag that area in. Undo if if it didn't really make the edit like you wanted it to. Do it again. Just hold down Control and hit Z. I'm going to try it again. I'll hold Alt or Option key, and I'll let's see if I can bring this tree, because this is the exact same tree. So I want to try to make some variations in this. There we go. Okay. It's really cool that works. But see, I'm getting duplicate copies of these trees, so I'll see if I can figure something out where I can pull from. I think I could maybe pull from this area. Oh, there we go. That kind of works. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with that. That works. That doesn't destroy the perspective so much, and then we can actually have some balancing of trees right here. All right, so that's the bonus of the clone stamp tool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold Alt or Option key, and I'm going to click like in this generalized area, and now I'm going to just click and drag and build out the rest of the bottom. Now you notice because I went into a seam over here, I'll have to do it again. So I'll hold Alt and click here, and then I'll just click and drag there. And it will allow me to, I'll hold Alt here, and then I can click and drag there and paint it in. I got a seam, so I will hold Alt, like let's say right here, and click and drag in there. Hold Alt here, and I'll click and drag in there. So Clone Stamp is a really great tool. Okay, so we've used the Clone Stamp tool to pretty much finish off the bottom part. So I'm going to use the same tool here. Hotkey is S. I'm going to hold Alt or hold the Option key if you're on a Mac and just click this area, and I'm going to go ahead and just click, drag, and just kind of tap and then release. And then if I run into a seam, I'll just click and drag and tap again until I can build. And then I'll hold Alt here since we have like foliage, and then I'll hold Alt here and then click and drag and draw. So you have to do it in kind of increments. Don't try to do it in all one big swipe, Try to break it down a little bit. Okay, so this kind of completes the idea of using a single image to kind of build out the rest of your composition, whatever you're trying to do. And what I'm going to do is, this looks a little too unrealistic. I mean, it's got some pretty tall trees going on here. I got some tree branches that are not really lining up with the others, so I can do what I need to do in order to fix and modify the rest of those edits, which I will. But I'll go ahead and just get all this placed in right now, just for a setup. Okay. All right, so I'm pretty much knocked out here. That's the bonus of the clone stamp. If you see like you got like values here, it's probably wise to select an area here instead of having two things that look the same, and just knock them out. So like I did there, and then try to do the same as you progress through the comp, because the clone stamp is redrawing the image over itself in another area. So you have to try to go through here, and you see I got like 3 like shadows. And it kind of shows you what it's going to look like before you place it. So I might just kind of knock that out a little bit. There you go, something like that. And go through here and kind of make a few more edits. So okay, so what I want to do is I don't want the trees to go this high. I mean, you got to get the concept of what this tool can be used for and what it can do. But what I want to do for this, I want to show you a trick. You can come over here on what's called the Marquee Selection tool, which is a rectangle. I can click and hold this down. It'll hold it, and it rolls out a submenu menu. And I could use the rectangle marquee. It's used the same way, but I'm going to use the elliptical Marquee Selection tool. And if I basically hold Alt-Shift down, I hold Alt and then hold down Shift and click from and drag. I can click and drag from the middle. Again, on Mac, your Alt key is your option. And I can expand this out to where I build out like kind of a parameter of what I want. If I release the Shift, if I just hold down Alt and click and drag, it allows me to come from the center. But I'm allowed to also click and drag, and as I'm clicking and dragging, move my hand around to kind of skew the rectangle marquee selection. So let's say I want to select this generalized area. And once it's made, I can go up to what's called Select. That's what we're doing, and I can go down to what's called Transform Selection. So I'm going to click this, and now I'm able to actually click and drag and expand this out a little bit further to capture the area I really want. And I can even move it over on the sides a little bit. Now I'm going to show you what this is going to allow me to do here. Okay, and then I'll hit the selectional tool and I'll say you want to apply it. I'll be like, well, yeah. And now I got it. And then what I can do is if I went to edit and cut right now, it's going to cut out everything that's in the middle of this marquee selection. Okay, so I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to go step backwards, or I could go Control Z. I'm actually going to go to what's called select, and I'm going to select what's called inverse. And this is going to allow it to flip, reverse what the selection is that I have in the center. And notice that now I have a rectangle marquee selection tool on the very outside. And now I'm going to go to Edit, Cut. And that is exactly what I'm looking for my movie poster here. Now, once that's done, you can use what's called the Magic Wand tool. And if I click this, and I click on the outside of anything that's on the outside of this image being on that layer, it will go ahead and reselect that area. Now what's cool is once that's done, I can go to Refine Edge up top. And inside Refine Edge, I get this little submenu. Notice everything goes to white, and that's exactly what we want, because down here in Refine Edge, I can actually feather it. If you use the Shift Edge too, you can actually break it in a little bit. I like to get at least like values here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Click OK. All right. And now I'll go to Edit Cut. And that is exactly what I'm looking for. So that gave me a little bit more of the feather. Another thing we can do is if you don't get exactly what you want, if you know using that characteristic, see how I still have a hard edge here? You can use the eraser tool, and I'm about to show you layer masking here in a second. I'm just going to use the eraser tool now, and you could go up, and it works just like where we were with the clone stamp. Hence, the brush tool will work just as well too. I'll just come in here and adjust the value, and I'll just click and drag now, and all I got to do is click and drag, and I can feather that edge even more. Notice by doing that, you don't get the full unity of the outside of that that circle, that edge, but it does work. So you can see what it's done here. I'm going to undo. When I did that, I used 0 hardness because if I have 100% hardness and I do it, look, it erases in a straight edge, and that's not what you want. So when you do erase, keep in mind you have to adjust your hardness too. I had mine down to 0, which allowed me to come across this. And the larger you have your brush too, notice I boosted up my brush a little bit, gives you more control. You don't have to go so down the middle. So you can try the refine edge. If you're not good at it, just use the eraser tool. And with the 0 hardness, and you're able to actually control a little bit more. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with this for now. And I'm going to go back to my selectional tool and just kind of have this position here. What I'll do now is I'll just take this image and I will I'm going to name it, let's name this Woods. And I did that by double clicking and then changing the name of it, and then just click outside on another layer and it maintains that name. I'm going to right click on that layer and go to duplicate layer and click OK. And with that said and done, I'm going to take this layer now, and in here you could go into what's called image adjustments, and I could go into levels, and I can mess with my middle tone, and I can also mess with my my highs and my lows, or my blacks. These are my crushing of my blacks down here, and this is kind of more my light intensity working in, and then this down here just controls nothing but the brightness and darkness. And I want to make this dark. So messing with these values, you have a lot of darkness and lightness manipulation. You'll have to come in here and kind of play with them if you want. And then click OK. And then that update's made to it. So if I turn this layer off, notice that's the original. It's always wise before you apply any of these adjustments to always duplicate the layer and do it. Because if you don't get it right, you can trash it and then repeat the process, reduplicate it. Does that make sense? Okay. So I can turn this on and I can kind of get more of what I'm looking for. So I can darken this out some to kind of create more of that that dark and night effect. What I might do is also add it again, and I'm going to see if I can darken out some of these values down here. So I'm going to take this same layer that I've already done, added the levels to it. I'm going to right click and go to duplicate again, click OK, and then I'll reapply those adjustments. So I'm going to the levels. And here I'm really going to emphasize the darkness. And then what I'll do is I can take the eraser tool again, and then if I have 0 hardness with the point, I'll just erase part of that image that's on top, and now I can work more dark tones into the bottom. So it's kind of like creating a combination of both of them. Okay, so we've kind of learned about so far the rectangle marquee tool. Keep in mind that we were using the elliptical. You can do this with the rectangle, and there's also another couple of marquee tool selections that you can apply. But the rectangle marquee tool works exactly the same way. So if you want to explore it, experiment, definitely go for it. So right here we have the multiple layers that are all overlaying on top of one another. I use the levels to kind of do the darkening process. But what I want to do now is I'm going to actually create what's called a folder. So I'm going to create a new folder, and it's next to creating of a new layer. And then I'm going to go up top and double click and rename this folder. And what I want to call this folder is I'm going to call it BG, like let's say background. So I just double clicked it, typed in the new name, and then click outside. I'll take all these layers. So I'm going to select the first one, hold shift, and select the very last one, woods, all the woods. And I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to let this hand drop into that folder. And see how they kind of come sliding over a little bit? And I'm going to rename it. Let's say this is dark woods. And then up top, let's rename this. Let's say dark bottom, I guess. Sounds good. And then you can click this little arrow, and it kind of closes up and reopens, so you can always get back into that folder, which is nice. So with this folder created, what we can do is I can right click and duplicate this folder, or duplicate the group, and go to OK. And then what I'll do is I'll create another layer, and then I'll hold shift and select that background copy with all those layers and contents in that folder. And I can click the little drop arrow over here, and I can go to merge layers. So now they're all together, and I can turn off the original, and I can still use it to my advantage. That's a good little trick to know. All right. So right here we have all the layers now merged together. We did not damage our original ones. We got them all in a group, which is good. I could turn that off and using the original. I could take this and we can modify it further. Now I'm going to go back to the selectional tool with this layer selected. I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to go to Scale. And I'm going to hold Shift and click and drag from one of the corners and just scale it just a little bit more. Because what I've decided here is I'm going to create a depth of field shot. Again, you shouldn't scale your images larger, but because this is shot 300 DPI with my DSLR camera, I'm kind of allowed to kind of go beyond the means just a little bit, which is good. So I'm going to just click that selectional tool and click Apply when I get what I want. And I'll, at any time, if you're zoomed in too far, you hold spacebar, it turns into the hand, and then you can kind of click and drag and move around. So keep that in mind. If I have my zoom tool option over here, if I click this and then I left click and I can kind of zoom in, I can hold the space bar down and click and drag, and I can move around in my comp, which is good. I'm about to show a little bit of that when we get to the layer masking. So I really wanted to build this this image and scene out a little bit more. Okay, so holding Alt or Option and left clicking, I can zoom back out, which is good. I'm going to go up to my eraser tool, and what I want to do is I want to go, just a little bit bigger, and I want to just kind of click and drag. I want to get rid of some of those edges a little bit more, I think. I still got some hard edges in there. And the bigger the brush, it's crazy. You actually have more control over how you can really feather this thing. Okay. Now I'll click the selectional tool and we're back to square one. So with all that done, again, I didn't damage the original. I can always bring it back just in case. But on this layer, I'm going to name this color. And what I like to do is I can take this layer and I can go to Image, Adjustments, and there's this other property called Curves. Now there's a lot of different color combinations that you can apply using in here. There's shadow and highlights. You can get in here and mess with all of them and really see which ones you like. I'm just going to use curves because curves is most widely used. And then in the sub rollout menu, see I got CMYK. I can move this to, let's say I want to add in one of these secondary colors, right? So I'm going to grab as it applies the color wheel of light, like what we studied in the color theory video, and I can go to, let's say if I switch to cyan, if I click and drag this curve, it's going to make it cyan. If I click and drag it the opposite direction, it's going to go with its complementary color on the color wheel of light, which is red. So I can move this line either way. Another cool part about curves is if I move it this way and then I left click again, I can create points across this curve, so I can apply and really control how much color I want to assort into this image. Now, you probably don't want to go too hard with it because we don't want it to look psychedelic, you know, but you can mess with these curves, and I really wanted to add red and really get the haunted red look. So I'm going to mess with this, and if I go this way, it adds red. I can bounce back the cyan as I get up here, and I can add as many points of this as possible. It's pretty wise to kind of minimize it down to about 3. This looks good because I'm trying to create a kind of like a red and green feel, like green being the sick, while the red is more of the danger, you know, of the idea. So I'm going to hit OK on that, and you can see what's already happened to this is these trees are poking out more. I still got the idea of the blue sky and the green trees, but the green leaves of the trees and foliage, but the trees have kind of contrasted a little bit more, which is great. So I'm going to go back in the image. Let's see. I'm going to go back into levels now, and I can just keep bouncing between curves and levels if I want to create the dark feel effect of all this. You know, look at what that did right there. Scary movie. Scene I'm looking for, and then I'll go with that and click OK. And then another thing you can do, you know, this is really looking pretty good. Another thing you can do is if you don't want to mess with curves and levels at all, you can always just have this layer select and go Image, Adjustments, and Desaturate, and that will do a straight black and white across the image, and then you have a black and white. Which black and white now is gives you a little bit of a bonus. Let's say I want to I'm going to cut this out a little bit more. You know, you could do the black and white and then apply the curve effect, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to do the eraser tool again. Let's just kind of lower the width down a little bit. I'm going to keep hardness to 0. I like those nice feather edges. So I'm just going to come in here and just feather this down a little bit more. And I'm going to go back to my selectional tool. And now with this image selected, I'm going to go into the layer select. I'm going to go to Image, and I'm going to go to Adjustments, and I'm going to go back into Curves. Now we desaturated, so now I can go back into Curves and go down to, let's say, the cyan again, and I'm going to pull in the red, and look what it does. It being black and white, then I can just pull in the single color into it, which is really cool. And now we're definitely feeling the haunted kind of scene look. I'm going to pull in some of the cyan too to really, probably not that hard. Let's say like right about here. That looks pretty good. That's got the creepy feel I'm looking for. Okay. Very cool. Now, with that said and done, I'm going to go back, Edit, Transform. Let's go ahead and scale this thing up a little bit more. Now, here's what's cool. I'm just going to kind of click, drag, and bring this down just over here a little bit with that property selected again. And then I'm going to hold Shift, click and drag. I want to maintain the uniform scale. I don't want to skew the image. Okay, release. and then I'll move it kind of back into the center. Now here's what's really neat. Remember, you don't want to scale your images too hard, but I'm really glad I managed to have the DSLR camera to do this. And then I will left click on the selection tool, and it's going to ask me to apply, and I'll hit apply. And then I will just use the zoom tool, hold Alt, and just kind of zoom out a little bit and see what we got here. Okay, so this is really working now. This is giving me the mood for the scene that I'm looking for. I still got some pretty good quality in here. But let's say I want to do more of like a kind of a blurred out depth of field look to all this, you know? So I'm going to take this eraser tool. Let's say I kind of maybe want to feather edge this up a little bit more in here. It's cool. That gives me what I'm really looking for as far as the movie titles go. And then all the main title will go up here and such. Alright, I'm going to go back to the selectional tool. Alright, and what I can do is, since images are literally more blurry in the background compared to the foreground, I could take this layer now that I've messed with all these adjustments with the curves and the levels, right click, and I'm going to go duplicate. Again, let's call this DOF for depth of field. And then with that same exact duplicated layer on top of the color layer that I made, I can go to filter, and I can go to blur, and I like to use what's called a Gaussian blur, so I'm going to select Gaussian, zoom out here real quick, and now I can indicate how much I want to apply. Now if the preview's turned on, you can see what's going to happen. So this really allows us to get rid of some of those pixel breakups. I'm going to turn the preview off and see how it's very hard edge, and then I turn it on and it kind of neutralizes everything. Creates that nice gloomy kind of feel. I think radius at 8 is really working for me, so I'm going to click OK. And because that layer is on top of this one, I'm going to go back to the eraser tool, and anything I erase on this layer, well, that's going to appear underneath. So I'll just go ahead and erase this now. And I can bring in, see, I can bring that quality back in here if I wanted to. Let me go edit undo, which is not what I wanted to do. I want it to be more neutralized here, but I'll erase it here, and I'll bring in some more of that fine quality there. Okay, so I'm going to click the selectional tool and go with that, so you can see the variations I'm building here. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with this as far as building of the background. That kind of establishes and allows you to understand how to use images and to build in your background environments, but also using correct images to match the resolution even, and what kind of hardware setup you need in order to make it possible. So keep that in mind. If you want to do the largest movie poster size, the 24 by 36, you can, depending on your hardware setup. But if you don't have the digital capturing devices needed to really maximize this resolution, you might want to stick with the 11 by 17. So keep that in mind based on finding images on the internet. I had the provided DSLR to make this happen, and yeah, I was able to make it work. And using that blur effect I just showed you, once you scale an image larger, if you blur it pixels, the pixelation out, and using the blur effect is a neat little trick around it. So moving forward, we're going to learn about layer masking now, and I'm going to drop in a character in here, and we're gonna make this yeah, even more scary. So Keep in mind that you can go to my LinkedIn page at linkedin.com if you would like to link up with me and have me as a resource and a reference in your list of contacts. You can send me a message at my LinkedIn, and that will reach out to my Yahoo email, hence my Gmail accounts, and I can always be there to help you. Thank you for watching, and look forward to working with you.